Andrew, male Omega, 24 years old, diagnosed with early gland failure. The medical report was written in stark black and white. I couldn't remember how many times I'd read it, desperately hoping this was just some stupid dream brought on by lack of sleep. But right beneath that report was another, my pregnancy test. The results said the embryo had already implanted, 3 months along. I stared at the two papers, identical in size yet telling two completely different stories, and my mind went blank. The car slowed down. The driver reminded me gently, "Madam, we're almost there." His voice snapped me back. I quickly crumpled up the early gland failure report and clenched it in my hand. When I got out, I quietly tossed it into a trash bin by the garden. Maybe if I threw it away, the disease would go away too. Holding the thin pregnancy report close, I stepped inside. The butler came forward to take my coat. "Brandon has already gone upstairs. Would you like something to eat? The kitchen's ready." I nodded, then shook my head. My heart felt completely hollow. I hadn't felt well this morning. Brandon was supposed to go with me to the hospital, but something came up at work, so I went alone. When I got the pregnancy result, I texted him, "Come home tonight. I have a surprise for you." But right after that, the diagnosis came, early gland failure. Our marriage had always been a business alliance. He would never accept the idea that his Omega was suddenly turning old before his eyes. And honestly, I couldn't accept it either, that my life might be cut short. How was I supposed to face him now? My steps grew heavy as I climbed the stairs, nervous and uncertain. I entered our bedroom. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. Brandon was taking a shower. I stood by the door for a while, then finally pushed it open. The water stopped. Brandon didn't turn around. He didn't sound surprised. "You're back." On our wedding night, I had been the one to approach him first, too. Later I learned that Brandon never locked the bathroom door while showering, because no one dared walk in. No one except me. After a year of marriage, I was no longer that timid newlywed. I took off my clothes and slowly wrapped my arms around him from behind. Brandon lazily caught my wrist. "Why are your hands so cold?" His tone carried no real emotion, just mild concern as he turned the water hotter. The shower started again, warm water flowing between us, separating and connecting all at once. I rose on tiptoe and used my teeth to lift the edge of the patch covering his scent gland, then tore it off completely. The skin underneath was pale from being covered too long. I brushed my lips against it, whispering, "Brandon, why do you always forget to take this off when you shower?" His body heat rose sharply. He turned, pulling me into his arms, pressing me against his chest so I could share his warmth. His kiss came before his answer, as always. It left me breathless, the only sound left in my ears the soft patter of water. And suddenly, I remembered the first time we met. Brandon had always been emotionally distant, clinically confirmed, as people liked to say. His parents had died young, and his grandfather had raised him alone. He never planned to marry, but when his grandfather grew furious and threatened to cut him off unless he settled down, Brandon had no choice. The old man's illness eased for a while, and he hosted a grand banquet, inviting every eligible Omega from the city's elite families. I shouldn't even have been there. As an illegitimate son, I had no right to attend. But my older siblings were all married off, and my father wanted to build connections, so he sent me. I still don't know why Brandon chose me. Before the banquet even ended, he had someone bring me to the main house. On the table were two things, a compatibility report showing our pheromones matched, and a diamond ring. Brandon had looked straight at me and said, "Andrew, will you marry me, too?" I said yes. Brandon held my hand and led me to his grandfather's bedside. The old man smiled, satisfied. I hadn't thought much back then. All I knew was that fate had just handed me something far too good to refuse. Being Brandon's lawful spouse, even just in name, was still better than being the illegitimate son everyone looked down on. On our wedding night, I had nervously pushed open the bathroom door and hugged him from behind. I still remember what he said back then. "Relax, don't be nervous." Yes, just like that, exactly like now. Looks like this gift from heaven was never really meant for me. I opened my eyes and held Brandon tighter. His breath brushed against my scent gland, almost teasing. "Go ahead," I whispered. Then I felt his teeth break the skin, marking me. My legs trembled, and he steadied me effortlessly. I buried my hand in his hair. "Don't stop," deeper. It was dizzying, overwhelming. When Brandon finally carried me out, my scent gland and half my back were covered in bruises. I felt dazed as he laid me down on the bed. For once, he didn't pull away. He lingered, kissed my forehead gently, almost tender. When I came back to myself, I saw that icy face softened, just a little, melted by the moment. A bitter ache rose in my throat. I couldn't meet his eyes. My voice came out hoarse. "Brandon, let's get a divorce." Brandon froze. After a few deep breaths, his normally indifferent voice sounded tense. What did you say? I covered my face, the wedding ring on my finger digging slightly into my skin. I said, I want a divorce. Brandon's words were slow, deliberate. Andrew, give me a reason. I buried my face deeper in my hands. Do I need a reason? Didn't we get married just to satisfy your grandfather's wishes? Brandon's voice was almost gritted through his teeth. So now that he's gone, you want to leave me, is that it? I felt like I had swallowed burning coals. My words came out raw and bloody. Yes. Brandon got out of bed. Unexpectedly, he didn't agree right away. Andrew, I don't understand why a single trip out would make you come back talking about divorce. From my perspective, our marriage is going well. If there's something you're unhappy with, tell me, and I'll do my best to fix it. Right now, you're not thinking clearly. Sleep on it tonight. If you still feel this way in the morning, we'll talk. Brandon rarely spoke so much. Then he left the bedroom. Only when the door clicked shut did I dare lower my hands and sit up. My palms were damp, tears washing over the ring. I fiddled with it gently, then couldn't help but feel the familiar ache again. The diamond ring, placed beside the pheromone compatibility report. Brandon had personally put it on me, then led me to see his grandfather. The ring had always been a little too big, so I had to pinch it with my other 2 fingers. It never bothered me, until that wedding night. Brandon carried me out of the bathroom and opened a brand new ring box on the nightstand. Inside was a subtle, perfect wedding band. He slipped it onto my ring finger. It fit perfectly. Grandfather said you shouldn't be uncomfortable. That diamond was standard size, didn't fit you well. That was my mistake. This one is to make up for it, and a promise. I promise that in our marriage, I will never let you feel uncomfortable. His fingertip brushed the ring absent-mindedly, and the warmth traveled along my finger straight to my heart. Only I knew how many little sparrows were fluttering wildly inside me at that moment. Brandon always kept his word. This year of marriage with him had been happier than all the previous 24 years of my life. But maybe I was born to be punished. The world couldn't let me be happy. I wiped my tears, gripped the ring, and slowly turned it in my fingers. I should return it to him. Before I could take it off, the bedroom door opened. Brandon was standing there, still holding the door, a thin sheet of paper in his hand. The butler trailed behind anxiously, holding my coat. My mind went completely blank. Brandon had seen my pregnancy report. The butler quickly tried to explain. I was just taking Madam's coat to the laundry and this fell out. Brandon, please, let's talk about this calmly. Brandon's expression was serious. He waved, and the butler immediately left the room. The bedroom door closed behind him. This audio is originally produced by the YouTube channel, Omegaverse Tales Studio. Please credit when sharing. Brandon stepped closer. So this is the surprise you wanted to tell me about. I turned my face away. It doesn't matter anymore. How doesn't it matter? You're carrying our child, and you still want a divorce? Andrew, why? There's no why. Fine. Brandon clenched the pregnancy report tightly. Andrew, I'm telling you, divorce is not an option. Don't even think about it. He repeated it word by word. Don't even think about it. 4. It was the first time I'd felt the full weight of Brandon's decisiveness. That word, decisive, was often used by his rivals, because once Brandon made a decision, he never went back. This time was no different. I was practically imprisoned. My world had shrunk to the estate. I couldn't step outside. Brandon even hired professional doctors to come over, but I feared that they were too skilled and would discover my early gland failure, so I resisted fiercely. In the end, they gave up. Brandon began leaving early and returning late. The staff were professional and discreet, hardly ever appearing in our paths. The only person I could speak to at all was the butler. The kitchen started preparing medicinal meals, but I couldn't eat 3 meals a day, and I'd vomit 5 times each. The butler would walk with me in the garden, patiently advising, what's there between a couple that can't be overcome? Just meet each other halfway. I only shook my head, saying nothing. I had never been Brandon's ideal choice, and I couldn't bear to watch myself wither in front of him. During this Cold War, we slept in separate rooms. The first few nights I couldn't sleep, then the nausea became too strong, and exhaustion eventually forced me into a reluctant sleep. But without his scent on the pillow, it felt unbearably lonely. There was no way around it. Every pregnant Omega experienced this. During pregnancy, an Omega's need for their alpha's pheromones increases dramatically. My instincts were uncontrollable, and I berated myself for not having hidden some of Brandon's clothes beforehand. When I overheard the butler talking to Brandon on the phone, he was going on a business trip. I sneaked into the master bedroom and took a few pieces of his clothing. I hid them in the sheets like a thief, secretly sniffing them, letting the lingering scent calm my restless body. I felt like a freak. Angry and frustrated, I clenched Brandon's tie in my teeth, hating this damn disease for ruining everything. My emotions were up and down all night. I slept hugging his clothes, and with his scent around, I could rest more peacefully. Late at night, someone gently adjusted my twisted neck, preventing a crick. I opened my eyes, not daring to move. Brandon held me from behind, a faint chill of the night air clinging to him. After a long moment, he sighed, whispering like smoke, "Andrew, why are you so stubborn?" I closed my eyes, letting tears trace the paths of the ones before. "Brandon, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." The night passed quietly, filled with silence and tears. Brandon's pheromones wrapped around me like a soft cloud, letting me sleep through the night. The next morning, he was gone. Only the wrinkles in the sheets proved he had been there. It wasn't just my imagination. The pheromones had calmed me, and my body had recovered somewhat. I went downstairs for breakfast. Brandon was already there. I sat across from him. The kitchen quickly brought a small bowl of vegetable and lean pork congee. The butler smiled. "Madam hasn't had much appetite the past few days, but today she's eating. Start with some congee. The kitchen has everything ready, the rest will be served shortly." The first part was clearly meant for Brandon, but Brandon didn't even raise an eyebrow. After finishing a bowl of pigeon soup, he wiped his mouth and spoke slowly. "In a few days, there's an engagement banquet. Andrew, you'll come with me. After that, I'll listen to you. We'll talk about divorce then." That afternoon, a charity auction was held, followed by an engagement banquet that evening. Brandon took me out early, probably because he thought I'd been cooped up at home for too long. The sky was overcast, but thankfully, it didn't rain. Our first stop was a bespoke tailoring shop. When he said we were here to have a suit made, I resisted. "We already have plenty at home," I said. Brandon didn't listen. He grabbed the measuring tape. "You've lost a lot of weight recently." As he measured my waist, his hand hovered in front of my abdomen. "It doesn't show at all." I almost said, "Of course not, it's only been 3 months." But in the end, I kept quiet, holding my breath until he was done. Then I changed the subject. "Even if you order one now, there's no time to make adjustments." The tailor's apprentice brought over 2 cups of tea. "Mr. Brandon sent your measurements last night," he said with a smile. "The suit has already been altered." I wrapped my hands around the cup for warmth, blinking. "Then why are you still measuring?" Brandon lowered his gaze and took a sip. "I just wanted to see how accurate my own measurements were." We drank the rest of our tea in silence. I changed into the altered suit. Brandon checked his watch. "There's still a little time before the auction starts. Come walk with me." It was strange. What kind of couple on the verge of divorce went strolling hand in hand through the streets? We weren't lovers anymore. Even when we were newly married, we'd rarely gone shopping together. But today, Brandon seemed oddly enthusiastic. He bought me several sets of clothes and jewelry. If there had been more time, he might have dragged me to a movie too. By the time we arrived at the Grand Court Hotel, the auction hall was already half full. I kept my smile in place, exchanging polite greetings with familiar faces like I always had at these functions. The so-called charity auction was really just for show. When my grandfather was young, he'd been reckless, did plenty of things he shouldn't have. Now that he was old, he wanted to accumulate virtue for his descendants, so he set up foundations and charity events like this. Whether they were truly charitable, who could say? But everyone knew how to play along. The bidding began. People raised their paddles casually, out of courtesy. Brandon did the same, buying a few small items. Then came the final lot, a sapphire diamond ring named Heart of the Ocean. A century ago, a Swiss jeweler had designed it to commemorate 50 years of marriage with his beloved. Time had passed, but the stones still shone brilliantly. Several people were tempted, bidding one after another. I looked toward Brandon. He didn't meet my eyes, but he lifted his paddle. No matter how high the price went, he followed, until, at last, he won it for 20 million. The ring was soon delivered. Brandon took my hand. He must have noticed I wasn't wearing my wedding band today. He slid the sapphire ring onto my finger. I instinctively pulled back. "Grandfather, I don't want it." Brandon's voice was calm. "But I want to give it to you." I stopped resisting. The ring settled perfectly on my finger, not a bit loose. Brandon said quietly, "Think of it as a gift." He didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what he meant, a parting gift. Someone nearby teased, "Brandon, you two are still so in love." Another chimed in, "Of course they are. They've only been married a year, still in the honeymoon phase. Unlike us old couples, no amount of sweet talk helps anymore." Laughter rippled through the crowd. I forced a small smile, but a dull ache spread through my chest, twisting everything inside me. My stomach lurched. I excused myself and hurried toward the restroom, without letting Brandon follow. The nausea hit hard. I needed his pheromones to steady my body, but if he sensed something was off, He'd never agree to the divorce. If this dragged on, he'd find out about my condition. It was better to end things quickly. By the time I emerged, the auction had ended. The socializing had moved to the garden. Guests clinked champagne glasses under the string lights, chatting and laughing. I spotted Brandon talking with someone. I thought about going over, but my feet wouldn't move. Forget it. We were about to part ways anyway. Best to stay low profile. I picked up a few pastries and found a quiet corner, eating to fill the emptiness in my stomach. As the sweetness spread through my mouth, two familiar-looking Omegas approached from a distance, probably someone's family members. I shifted behind a tree, not in the mood for small talk. They stopped just a few steps away, clinking glasses and gossiping. Did you see that? Brandon just spent $20 million on a ring for Andrew. Who didn't see that? Everyone in there heard the bidding. I'm so jealous. My husband was going to bid too, but when he saw Brandon raise his paddle, he said, "Forget it, that one's already his." Honestly, Andrew's lucky. Everyone knew old Mr. Haynes wanted to see his grandson married before he passed. There were so many outstanding Omegas at that wedding, beautiful, talented, but Brandon chose him. A bastard child, no less. You don't get it. That's exactly the appeal. Illegitimate kids have that edge, probably inherited from his Omega father. They laughed together. I stuffed more dessert into my mouth. Too much sweetness, it turned bitter. I'd heard words like that all my life, yet they still stung. I tried to slip away quietly, but they kept talking. Speaking of inheritance, did you hear? Someone just died. Who? An old servant. I can't remember the name. He'd been around for ages. But here's the thing, he was Andrew's father's lover. What? No way. I saw that old man. He must have been 70 or 80. His father's barely in his 50s. You think he'd fall for an old guy? That's what you don't know. The old servant had some kind of gland disorder, something that caused premature aging. People said he was actually Andrew's Omega parent, just pretending to be a servant all these years. You're kidding. Wasn't Andrew brought back by his father alone? Nobody ever mentioned who gave birth to him. Maybe it's not that they didn't know, maybe they couldn't say. Think about it. If that old man really was Andrew's Omega parent, could Andrew have inherited that same disorder? If he suddenly aged early, would Brandon still stay with him? A sharp ringing filled my head. I couldn't hear anything else. That servant, they were talking about David. He'd taken care of me since I could remember. His hair was gray, his face lined, always looking older than my alpha father. I'd always called him Uncle David. As I grew up and got busy, we saw each other less. He even came to my wedding, dressed neatly in a suit. Brandon and I toasted him that night, but I hadn't been home in a long time. My chest tightened painfully. Uncle David, gone. Why didn't anyone tell me? I turned, wanting to find my father and ask. And there was Brandon, not far away, his face pale. Andrew, you, he called out. I followed his gaze downward. Crimson bloomed across my white suit trousers. You're listening to Omegaverse Tales Studio, a YouTube channel dedicated to captivating short stories. Let's continue. The world tilted. As darkness swallowed my vision, Brandon rushed forward and caught me in his arms. Uncle David, could you not pick me up after school anymore? I was still in elementary school then. I had just finished bathing with his help, tugging at his sleeve as I made my timid plea. Uncle David lowered his eyes for a moment, then looked back at me gently. Why, Andrew, you don't want me to come get you? I bit my lip, feeling wronged. My classmates' words echoed in my ears. They said you look more like my grandpa than my uncle. Before I could finish, tears spilled down my cheeks. Why doesn't my Omega dad want me? I don't want to be a bastard. I want my dad to pick me up like everyone else. Children can be cruelly discerning. Around my alpha father, I was always well-behaved and sensible. But with Uncle David, the one person who loved me without reservation, I let all my tears and hurt flow freely. I didn't understand then that pain only shows itself before those who truly care. Uncle David pulled me into his arms, his hand gently rubbing my back, his voice steady and soft. Don't cry, Andrew. Your father probably didn't mean to. Maybe he had his reasons. You're still little. I'd never feel at ease letting you go home alone. How about this? When I come to pick you up next time, I'll stay a little farther away, so no one sees. Would that be okay? His voice seemed to come through layers of water, faint and distant, but I could still see his face clearly, the wrinkles pulling down his eyelids, and beneath them, a gaze full of guilt and tenderness. Uncle David, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I nearly drowned in my own tears before I felt something warm against my hand, something that pulled me back to consciousness. Brandon was sitting beside me, dark circles under his eyes, a faint stubble shadowing his jaw. Andrew, you're awake. Do you feel any pain? I blinked at him, dazed. He reached out and gently wiped the wetness from my face. I suddenly grabbed his hand. Am I bleeding? What about the baby? Is he still there? Brandon clasped my fingers tightly. The baby's fine. The doctor said your mood has been too unstable lately, and the pheromones I've given you weren't enough. That's why there were signs of a threatened miscarriage. My trembling hand went to my belly. It was already faintly rounded. Still there. Still there, the only bond one had left that connected me to life. My breathing steadied. I released his hand and whispered, I wanted to stay by your side through the engagement banquet. I didn't mean to cause a scene. I'm sorry. Brandon caught my fingertips again. We're not divorced yet. Don't talk like that. The banquet means nothing compared to you. Rest, Andrew. I've already had people investigate what you heard. If it's true, I'll have your father come and explain everything. If it's a lie, the ones who spread it will pay for it. My throat tightened. My eyes burned again. He had always been a man of precision, immaculately dressed, every hair in place. But now his shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, exhaustion written all over him. He hadn't left my side, not even to change. Brandon, I just keep making trouble for you, don't I? Tears fell again despite me. Brandon brushed them away with the back of his hand. It's not trouble, he murmured. Let's not talk about that. His voice was calm, his face expressionless, but everything he did was gentle, always thinking of me. He tucked the pocket square from his suit into my palm. What matters is that you woke up. I'll take care of the rest. Just rest, okay? I obediently closed my eyes, waiting until I heard him leave before opening them again. The pocket square was soft, carrying his lingering pheromone scent. I pressed it to my nose, breathing deeply. I wanted to remember this scent, to keep it with me, no matter what happened next. Brandon worked fast. On the third day of my stay in the top-floor hospital suite, my alpha father arrived, carrying a brown leather suitcase. It had been a while since I'd last seen him. There were streaks of gray at his temples now. A bad feeling crept up my spine. My hands clenched into fists as I looked toward Brandon. He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, steady as ever. Dad, I forced the word out. My father set the suitcase down slowly. These are his belongings. He wanted everything burned, said you shouldn't see any of it. But I think, you deserve to know. His lips trembled as he spoke, and in his voice I heard the weight of David's lost years. I didn't want the marriage your grandfather arranged for me. I ran away. That's when I met him. I made mistakes. He was supposed to leave, but then you came along, and he got sick. I didn't even notice when he left, just that suddenly, he was gone, like a dry leaf carried off by the wind. Brandon closed the door quietly and held me for a long time. He asked softly, do you want to open Uncle David's suitcase? I shook my head violently. No, I don't want to. Take it away. I don't want to see. I buried myself under the blanket, wishing I could erase the last few days entirely. If I forgot, maybe Uncle David wouldn't be gone. Brandon didn't argue. He just took my bitten, bleeding fingertips gently from my mouth and brushed a thumb along my cheek. Maybe it was because he stayed by my side so much, but my nausea faded, replaced by constant drowsiness. Even so, my sleep was restless. I woke drenched in sweat, sometimes bleeding again. I didn't dare tell Brandon. I just drifted in and out of days, half-conscious. After half a month, even sleep stopped coming. I started pretending, to keep Brandon from worrying. When I heard the doctor call him out, I quietly followed them into the hallway. Their faces were grim. The doctor handed him a few sheets of paper. My heart froze. Was that my sentence? I slipped back into the room, pretending to sleep again. When Brandon returned, I stirred, forcing a weak smile. You went out? The edge of those papers peeked out from his pocket. I tried to ignore them, but couldn't. You saw the doctor. What did he say? Brandon tucked the papers deeper into his pocket and sat down beside me, gripping my shoulders gently. Andrew, listen to me, he said. His eyes wavered for the first time. The doctor said your body isn't strong enough right now. You're not fit to carry a child. I'll be with you through this, okay? We can wait. No. Before he could finish, my composure snapped. Weeks of fear and exhaustion shattered at once. I pushed him away, shaking, sobbing. Don't even think about it. He's in me. I won't let anyone take him away. I clutched my stomach, backing toward the wall. The windows were sealed shut, and Brandon stood blocking my path. We stared at each other, my chest heaving. I knew I must have looked pathetic. But Brandon didn't raise his voice. He didn't force me. He just looked lost. Andrew, please don't be scared. I'm not. I couldn't hear the rest. My hearing blurred, my vision dimmed. I felt my knees give way as I whispered hoarsely, Grandpa, please, please don't. He's all I have left. That was the last thing I remembered, before Brandon released his pheromones, calming me completely, and everything faded into quiet, suffocating darkness. Brandon completely confined me. My world shrank to the master bedroom bed, with only rare moments when I could get up and move around. I knew if I resisted too violently, he might even chain me down. So I started behaving, curling up quietly most of the time, saying nothing. Brandon brought in more specialized doctors, who checked me every day. I was cautious at first, refusing to eat anything, fearing they might slip something into my food to harm the baby. The butler would bring soup or porridge, coaxing gently, "Just a little, please. If you don't eat, the baby will suffer. I promise, nothing harmful will be added. For my sake, just a little, please." I knew my mind was unraveling, but I couldn't stop it. Brandon no longer slept separately. He left early and returned late, so I would usually fall asleep first, not seeing him return, yet every morning I woke up in his arms. One arm wrapped around me, the other resting over my stomach. He was always warm. I both craved him and feared him. I knew this couldn't go on. It was torture for both of us. That night, I cleaned myself meticulously, and after Brandon fell asleep, I quietly undid his pajamas buttons with my teeth, kissed him gently, trying to please him. Brandon woke and tensed. I inched lower. He couldn't resist anymore, lifting me onto his chest. His eyes glistened with tears. "Andrew, why are you doing this? You're trembling, you don't want this." "Why?" My face wet, I desperately kissed his jaw and cheeks. "I do want this, Grandpa, I do. I'm obedient. I just don't want this to go on anymore." He dodged my kiss, gripping my jaw with both hands. "Then what do you want?" I whispered, "Let's get a divorce. I'm not fit to be your lifelong partner, you don't need to stay for me." Brandon closed his eyes, drew a deep breath, and said, "We both missed the engagement banquet, so whatever I said then doesn't count. Andrew, don't even think about divorcing me." Then his eyes darkened. He pulled me close and kissed me fiercely. Our teeth clashed, and blood mingled with our mouths. Yet neither of us released. Like two wild beasts, we fought without yielding. The night was a mess. Brandon was on fire, and we left the master bedroom in chaos. I only managed to call a halt because I feared dehydration, otherwise, he would have moved the battle elsewhere. When I woke, I was in the room next door, lips crusted with dried blood. The butler stood smiling by the bed, tray in hand with warm water and porridge. "Awake? Thirsty? Or shall we start with something light?" Still groggy, I asked, "Why am I here?" The butler grinned, teasing, "The master bedroom's being tidied. Brandon is in the study, handling work. He told me to stay with you until you woke." I scratched my chin awkwardly. "Ah, I see." The butler winked. "See? No problem a couple can't overcome. Madam, just be good with Brandon, okay?" I forced a smile. There were still things left unsaid between Brandon and me. Until that was resolved, all sweetness had been nothing but sugar-coated traps. Brandon spent more and more time with me. Most days he stayed home, only occasionally retreating to the study for work. Once the doctors confirmed my condition, Brandon lifted the restrictions, letting me go for walks. Sometimes we left the estate entirely, driving out like any ordinary couple, holding hands, chatting, going to the movies. As the weather turned colder, he remembered thick coats, and we held hands tightly inside their sleeves. In the brief darkness before the movie began, he would brush a fleeting kiss on my lips. That day, the film was boring. I leaned against his shoulder and fell asleep, returning his kiss only when the credits rolled. Divorce became an unspoken topic we never mentioned. At 5 months pregnant, heavy snow forced us to cancel a planned date. We retreated to the underground screening room, picking a random film. I wrapped myself in a blanket. "I used to come here alone to watch movies. You probably never came since the place was built. I have a good eye, made a few picks that were profitable," I said. Brandon sat close, pulling me and the blanket into his arms. He kissed my gland, murmuring, "You're the best." He had been affectionate more often lately, but my gland was weakening, so I couldn't reciprocate. The film seemed like an ordinary romance at first, until the heroine developed progeria. I froze. I couldn't look at Brandon but felt him tighten his hold. When the heroine aged into an elderly woman, fell under a cherry tree, and the hero didn't recognize her, I broke down completely. I grabbed his shoulders, biting him, trembling. "Brandon, you did this on purpose. You knew about my condition, didn't you, you bastard?" He didn't answer. I saw tears in his eyes as he wiped mine. I turned away, pounding his shoulder, and glimpsed the first hints of gray at his temples. I cried out, "Grandpa," and held him tightly. "Why is it me with progeria, yet it's your hair that's gray?" Brandon still said nothing, only kissing me deeply, over and over. By the time my emotions settled, the movie was over. I buried myself in his chest, confessing my fears. "I know I'm sick. I'm terrified, afraid I'll age too quickly, that the baby might inherit this disease. I'm scared I'll become an old man before giving birth. I'm terrified. Brandon stroked my back. I asked the doctor, it's not as severe as you think. Modern medicine is advanced. If your glands can't support you, we'll consider artificial ones. The disease is rarely inherited. After the baby is born, we'll screen early and prevent anything. Don't be afraid. I'll always be by your side. I felt a little reassured, brushing his graying temple with both bitterness and sweetness. You're surprisingly good with words lately, I teased. He said, I'm naturally unemotional. I can't express feelings well. So I researched and consulted the doctor. How am I doing? I was half sincere, satisfied now, but who knows later. Brandon bent down, kissing my weakened gland lightly. Baby, I'll take care of you for life. My ears burned, and my face flushed. I buried my head in him, dryly changing the subject. I know you're unemotional, but why choose me to marry? Was it just because I was easy on the eyes? Brandon pressed my hand to his chest. No, I used the most scientific method. Back then, Grandpa had lingered on his sickbed for a long time, and his only wish was to see his grandson married. But Brandon knew himself. He couldn't express emotions or feelings properly, and even perceiving them was a struggle. So marriage had never crossed his mind. He wasn't confident he could be a good alpha husband. Yet Grandpa's condition couldn't be delayed. If this was his final wish, Brandon would fulfill it. This story is exclusively produced by the YouTube channel, Omegaverse Tales Studio. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. He exhaled, and soon a pile of profiles of eligible Omegas arrived. Looking through them, Brandon was overwhelmed for the first time. He couldn't distinguish what made one Omega different from another. Grandpa said, then just meet them in person. Your parents did the same. They gave each other photos, were dissatisfied, and yet when they met, they immediately knew. Brandon agreed. Of course, he also thought ahead. Divorce would be a hassle later, so he had to choose the most suitable partner, like making a strategic business collaboration. To select that partner, Brandon used the most traditional method, testing heart rates. They say seeing someone you like makes your heart race. He might not sense emotions, but his body wouldn't lie. Brandon seemed a little proud as he said, the first time I saw you, my heart rate shot up to 120. I tested it a few more times until the butler came with the heart rate chart and said, Brandon, stop. Your heart's going to form a shape. I leaned my ear against his chest. Really? Seeing me makes your heart race? The heartbeat was strong, and Brandon's reply came softly, yes. It slowed down eventually, but not much. Thinking of you, it still rises. Listening to him, a smile lingered at the corner of my lips. I asked one last time, Grandpa, do you really have no regrets marrying me? Brandon looked at me solemnly. There's no reason why I fell for you, so naturally, there's no reason to regret it. Andrew, you can always rely on me. I cupped his face, leaned in, and kissed him deeply, lingering in the warmth and certainty between us. The movie's ending wasn't perfect, but I think my ending with Brandon won't be too bad.